Hi, Wasteland Armor here. We're back again today with another fun video. So today we're going to be discussing, I think, one of the most controversial milsurps on the market, the Grevair 8805, and we're going to be talking about just its practical use, just for fun, possible even SHTF applications, and then also just kind of a general review of the thing. I think these guns are probably the most misunderstood milsurp on the market that I've encountered. So let's dig into it. So first off, just what we have is a 5-shot 8mm Mauser caliber bolt action rifle. It has kind of this fun little weird barrel jacket on it. Just take a look at that. Kind of a unique feature. Your just typical notch rear sight, barleycorn front sights. They go out to something ridiculous, like 2,000 yards, like most of them, or meters, so even farther. But just, pretty typical bolt action rifle for what you'll run into. But these guns are kind of infamous in the shooting community. So why do I say that? Well, so you're thinking about wanting to get an 8mm Mauser and you run across one of these. And what's to stop you? Well, so according to kind of just gun culture lore, these guns aren't safe. Or so they say. So what do I mean by this? Well, so kind of just for a little bit of background history, the French released the 1886 Lebel, obviously in 1886, using their new smokeless powder 8mm Lebel cartridge, and this absolutely caught everybody by surprise. The round was way faster, more accurate, fouled less, and didn't leave a big smoke cloud. So everybody's racing to catch up, and the Germans were pretty quick on the ball and got the technology, and they released the Grevair 88 in 1888. Incidentally, they didn't actually start production until about 1890, which is when this gun was built. And kind of just a cool thing about it is it is serial number 467. This is a very, very early production one. So the original 1888s, they used a Mannlicher and Block system clip. So they packet loaded, which is a very fast loading system, very advanced for the time. If you've ever seen a Carcano clip or a M95 Mannlicher, or even similar to an M1 Grand, that's what you think with that in mind. That's what they were doing. Definitely better than what the French had. The 8mm rimless cartridge was pretty nice too. Now that was the original J variant. It was a much heavier bullet than the later ones, and it wasn't moving as fast. It was supposed to be a little lower pressure. And it used a .318 bullet, so it was a 318. And this is kind of where the trouble with these things started. So early on in the adoption, several of these blew up. Now, it turns out part of what actually happened was there was an excess of jacket fouling in the barrel, which was making the bores extra, extra tight. The jackets were too soft on the early ammunition. And on top of that, the powder, the early smokeless powder they were using was breaking down, and it was acting almost like pistol powder would, where it's burning way too quick. Spiking pressures way above what they should be. So that caused several kabooms. There was actually even a big scandal about it being the time they called it the Gewehr, meaning the Jewish rifle. Definitely some forebodings of anti-Semitism there, but it ended up being proven not true, but the rifle had a bad rap. But that being said, it continued in use for about 10 years, and then, of course, Germany adopted the excellent Grevair 98 Mauser. So in modern times, people tell you just get a Grevair 98. The Grevair 88s are a novelty. And why is this? Are these things not usable today? Well, for starters, if you're going to use one, it is nice to find a Grevair 8805, and they did some updates in 1905. So they added a stripper clip guide, and you can see them here, and they're just riveted on, and it allows it to use Mauser type stripper clips. They put some feed lips on the inside so that it will hold the rounds in without having the Mannlicher and blocks. And then they also added these kind of cute, cool little door on the bottom just so that it doesn't get mud in the old ejection hole. But the most important thing that they did, and this was done on some regular 1888s as well, is they added, you'll see it here, there is an S there. And they widened the throat on the chambers so that that new .323 JS cartridge, when it fired, it would give a little bit of room for that neck to expand. On the original ones, it was awful tight, and that jacked the pressures way up. So when they did that, a lot of the guns also had their barrels widened out to be 323 or replaced. However, not all of them did. Some were 318 still, and people will say those are dangerous to shoot. Now, incidentally, this gun is one of the guns with a 318 bore, but it does have the JS chamber. So, kind of makes you question, is this thing safe to shoot? And with what kind of ammunition? So for practicality, what can we do with this gun? Well, I actually shoot JS ammunition in it with no excess pressure signs. I've used the Federal commercial ammunition, which isn't real, that's low pressure, loaded about 30-30 pressure. But I've also used Hornady JS ammunition. I've used Yugoslavian surplus JS, and I've used Romanian surplus JS ammunition, all of which have done just fine, except the Hornady, and I'll have a little anecdote on that in a minute. And how is this able to do this? Is it safe to do this? Well, I would argue that the German military seemed to feel it was safe. They issued these in World War I, and they specifically marked them with a marking to show that they could use that ammunition. So what advantages would you have if you wanted to use one of these guns? Well, for starters, they're antique. They all are. So these guns are not federally classified as firearms, so there's no FFL paperwork. You could even mail order these if you really wanted to. Something, however, I have noticed is it's also incredibly accurate. The accuracy on it is actually, for me, I found to be comparable to about like a Swedish Mauser. It's more accurate than any Mauser 98 I've shot. Also, the action strength on them, I'm not sure is as weak as people make it out to be. The Mannlicher Schnauer action is actually based on this gun, and they've put rounds up to 270 Winchester in those with no issues. The actions also are butter smooth, just beautiful actions. The durability on these guns seems to be pretty good. One thing you do have to make sure is you put the bolt head face back on. It's a separate piece. That'll also cause a blown up gun if you've got no bolt face and you fire it, but that shouldn't happen. I still kind of wonder how that did happen, but I guess a lot of the conscripts probably just weren't really that educated on it. The barrel jacket has also been pointed out to be a weakness. I haven't had any issues with mine with rusting under it. It does definitely keep the heat down, and it free floats the barrel, which was very advanced concept for its time. One other really nice thing about these guns is they're actually really light. Lighter than a 98 Mauser, probably in Carcano territory. So, but how do they shoot? How do they handle? Were they ever used in combat? There was actually a siege in Africa where I believe it was 8 German soldiers held off something along the lines of 2,000 natives that attacked a fort. These guns did absolutely phenomenal in that battle. Those were the original model too, not the updated ones. But I'm going to show you a clip. I do a mad minute with one, and you can just kind of see the smoothness of the action and also just the kind of the effect on target in an engagement like that. So I'll let you take a watch on that. So with the 8805, you load it with a clip instead of the original in blocks. They're not quite as smooth as your 98 Mausers. Alrighty. We have our target down at 100 yards. We're going to see how many of them we can put on them in a minute. Alright, set.
3, 2, 1. Stop.
Look like 15 rounds. One thing I'll note on this gun is it's a lot smoother than any Mosin I've ever fired. The stripper clips are stiff, so it's no 98 Mauser. But as you can see, the gun did not, in fact, explode. So let's go take a look down at the target and see how that went. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Looks like 13 out of 15 rounds hit. So I'd say not too bad for a gun built 131 years ago. So as you can see from that video, the gun did pretty well. Now I use Federal ammunition in that. Federal is my preferred load. I like having that little bit lower pressure just because it is easier on it. The guns are just old. It's 133 years old at the time of filming this. But you can use the hotter ammo in them if they have the S chamber. I don't think I would try it in an original J chambered gun. I just don't know what would happen. I probably would be fine, but it would have higher pressures and you're asking for problems. So how would this compare to other military surplus guns? How would I rate it for general use? So I'm going to go out on a limb and probably make some people mad. I consider it better than the Mosin Nagant. It's better than the Carcano. I'd probably rate it right about on par with an M95 Mannlicher. And I actually consider it to be as good or better than the early Mauser patterns as well. I actually prefer it to a 98 Mauser, however it is inferior in its handling of gas. And I do have a story about that. So I did fire some Hornady ammunition in it, and I actually had a defective primer, and I talked to a gunsmith, and he said it was not an overpressure, it was actually a bad component. And luckily, and this is a feature I would look for if you get one of these, I have the updated gas shield on the cocking knob there. And when that primer filled, it blew back through the primer, through the bolt, and I actually saw the flash deflect off of that shield, which was really lucky I didn't get it in the face. And the cocking piece actually had a chunk of metal gone from it. This is a replacement cocking piece. The gun continued to function like that. You could have kept shooting it just fine, but that was spooky. So definitely not the best at handling gas, although it did its job and kept it away from my face. I'm just glad I didn't take that chunk of metal into the forehead, but I would consider then for SHTF use, if you're looking at an antique, actually this might be one of the better options available to you. They use a comparable round to a 30-06. It's fairly available. These guns are extremely accurate. They're light. I'd put it on par with most other bolt-action surplus rifles. Compared to a modern rifle, how would I rate it? Well, so accuracy is going to be a little farther behind. The sights are obviously inferior. The actual quality of workmanship is probably better than most modern rifles, but they're hard to mount scopes on, so please don't sporterize an old rifle. But if you were to try to, it would still be harder on this gun. Stripper clip feeding is a little bit rough, as you probably saw from that Mad Minute. It's not designed to be used like that, so it's going to be just a little bit rougher than on a 98 Mauser, but it's still doable, definitely doable. As far as being used for, say, a hunting gun, these things, yeah, absolutely great gun for hunting. Target shooting, good target shooter. I think it'd be a good. I haven't had a chance yet, but I want to use it in a vintage match because I think these may actually be right up there with the Swedish Mausers and the Swiss rifles for accuracy. The bolt face is actually very similar to a Remington 700. Some of the features on it, which is kind of funny, but might account for some of that accuracy. It is a push feed action, so don't double feed it. That's not good. But overall, yeah, I would say just these are a fun rifle. I think that they are underestimated. And would say that they really are as good or better than a lot of their contemporaries, and even hold their own against more modern guns like the Mauser, the Lee Enfield, the Springfield. If you are armed with one of these, I really don't think that you're at that much of a disadvantage against those, and you have an advantage against a lot of the other commonly used surplus rifles. But I appreciate you watching this episode. Like and subscribe if you enjoy it and like this type of content. And I love hearing comments and just hearing what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching.